The news now on BBC One with Darren Jordan.
Good afternoon. President Bush has flown to his weekend retreat, Camp David, to plan America's military response to Tuesday's terrorist attacks. In Afghanistan, the Taliban regime has asked all foreigners to leave the country, and it's warned neighbouring states that they'll be drawn into war if they help the United States mount an attack. Pakistan is due to reveal today how much help it's prepared to offer the Americans. The Iraqi leader, Saddam Hussein, also warned America against resorting to force. And in New York, the painstaking search for survivors still goes on. From New York, Ben McCarthy reports.
It is back-breaking, heart-breaking work, but hour after hour the recovery operation goes on. Buckets of debris passed along lines of volunteers. These people have been working around the clock for 4 days, and they still have a mountain of rubble to move in the painstaking search for the victims. At one stage, a fire engine, crushed almost beyond recognition, was lifted clear. Many firefighters are still amongst those missing. The visit by President Bush yesterday lifted the spirits of the rescue teams as he promised action against those responsible.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
And even after 4 days, there's still hope that somewhere beneath the twisted metal and tons of concrete, there could still be survivors. Overnight in New York and across America, prayers were being said at candlelit vigils. There's no shortage of volunteers who want to take part in the recovery operation, and they are optimistic. But no one has been pulled alive from the rubble in more than 2 days. So the friends and relatives of those who are missing are still having to endure an agonizing wait for news of their loved ones. Ben McCarthy, BBC News, New York.
As America continues to plan its military response, investigators trying to work out exactly who was behind the atrocity have made more progress. The cockpit voice recorder has been recovered from the airliner which crashed in Pennsylvania.
Late last night, a tired-looking George Bush arrived at Camp David. America's commander-in-chief is holding what's being called a council of war today at the presidential retreat. Across the country, 35,000 reservists are getting ready. The White House says the threat of further terrorist attacks on America is continuing and immediate.
I'm getting phone calls from retired World War II veterans in Covington, around here in New Orleans, that are asking to be recalled to active duty.
At the crash site in Pennsylvania, they think a fight between hijackers and passengers could have brought the plane down. Late last night, they took away the voice cockpit recorder, which may provide the answer. And at the Pentagon, soldiers and their families came to the point of impact, hoping that a vigil might bring some understanding of the forces which has ripped their lives apart. Tom Carver, BBC News, Washington.
The Taliban authorities have threatened to attack any neighbouring country that helps the United States launch military strikes against Afghanistan. The warnings were given in Pakistan by the Taliban's deputy ambassador.
Similarly, if any neighbouring country gave territorial way or airspace to USA against our land, it would draw us into an imposed war.
Well, Adam Brooks is in Islamabad and Tom Carver is outside the Pentagon. Adam, first to you. We've seen a pretty serious threat from the Taliban. How's Pakistan going to respond to that?
Well, I think that threat is designed to influence the debate that's going on inside Pakistan right now over just how far Pakistan's prepared to throw in its lot with the United States and whatever coalition the US can put together in what it's calling its new war on terrorism. A meeting's going on right now in Islamabad. President Musharraf is meeting with his cabinet and the National Security Council to decide just how much help they're going to give the United States. The Taliban clearly wants them to give less rather than more. I think those threats are designed to influence that debate.
Adam, just briefly, what's the feeling of ordinary people there on the street?
Mixed. Disgust and horror at the terrorist atrocities, but there is a small and vocal and potentially important minority here who are deeply opposed to American involvement and deeply supportive of the Taliban.
Tom Carver there in Washington, let me bring you in. What kind of military response are we likely to see now from the Bush administration?
Nothing imminently. George Bush is holding a council with his national security advisors today. One official is saying that this is going to be more of a decision-making meeting than previous ones, but certainly he has to line up this coalition of moderate Arab states, really, before he can take any sort of military action.
And Tom, we've just heard that Saddam Hussein has urged the West not to use military action, to use wisdom. How's that likely to go down with President Bush?
I think it'll be ignored. Saddam Hussein is enemy number one, both for Colin Powell and, of course, for George Bush and George Bush's father. But it will be taken into account as to Iraq's stand, of course, and what they want to do is to find out exactly which Arab nations are implacably opposed to America, and then they will go after them, and I'm sure Iraq will be one of them. OK, Tom, Adam, thank you very much. Israeli forces have launched missile attacks at 3 separate Palestinian security targets in the Gaza Strip. 12 Palestinians, including 5 policemen, were injured in the raids, and several buildings were damaged. Transatlantic flights are returning to normal after Tuesday's attacks. All the major airlines have resumed flights, but it's likely to take several days to clear the backlog. Priority will be given to those who have compassionate reasons for flying. And one other story today, a man's been arrested after 3 bodies were discovered in a house in Greater Manchester. Officers were called to the house in Ashton-under-Lyne in the earlier hours of the morning. The 3 dead were a 45-year-old man and 2 women aged 46 and 42. It's believed they were a couple and their daughter. Well, that's it. There are news bulletins every hour on BBC News 24, but I'll be back with more news at 5:10 here on BBC One.